Hello, humanity, Americans. Leading up to the World Trade Center attack, all the countries involved with it, including our own, were used remotely by the same way. For example, they are still used remotely with their syntax regarding the North and the South with the Civil War. There were multi-front human rights impositions and collusion/s only permitted with them. And then America's founders were born. Even slavery, northern colonies and southern colonies, sickly distinctly too, not just with England. And it was through there because then too, there were fact chibi nature tortured, extorted, and fact chibi nature enslaved. Sickly distinctly, everyone was and is. And the breaching method measures when we speak about it, because there's demonstrations of it by nature, everyone at the same time is forcing other things, others ourselves, to be blamed where nature itself is showing us. All those civil rights impositions on women, on native difference, on black people's rights of eyes. Even slavery rolls only permitted northern colonies and southern colonies, specifically so no nature of unity could be standing, no nature of independence could be a voice. And then even easier, only an individual could deal with the finite or explain for groups. In other words, nature shows us that we are being and have been used as systems other than its own. It shows us with negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures as part of what it's showing us at the same time, where it shows us there are distinct individual species bodies, and each one of them are made up of a whole bunch of individual bodies. And they have group differences like two eyes and two sexes generated across species bodies. So we can discern to an extent nature's body itself, showing us this. And nature itself shows us how it is functional, being the rest of how the rest of its complete identity is inseparable from all the individual parts, such as that part where the individual species body is about. It's a unity, but it's also an independent body simultaneously. And we could only access that power/might. Nature shows us too, where there is syntax and the experts at countries XYZ with power and might, power/might, if you will. Tactical ulterior, individually grouped and together, those parts of that phrase, power/might. Appreciated tactical ulterior from the one that's generating into everything. We don't have to agree. We're not supposed to agree about the name of it. Nature shows us why, too, because that's part of what it shows us. It is functional, being hyper invisible, but still discernible as itself, nature's body, distinctly from how it is invisible, but still discernible as itself, nature's body. English grammar was revealed to be taught this way. In many pray. But then the sciences and it became across the globe at countries A through Z, influenced by hyperforeign methods/s. They got other things, others ourselves. Blame for things that nature keeps showing us to blame on a breaching. Nature shows us all those distinct civil rights impositions were about different things, different subjects, but they were all about the same breaching method. Neither voices in the northern colonies nor the southern colonies have freedom of speech to speak against those rights either, unless they were in internationally monitored conversations that were collusion/s with it, and or inside the sense and sensibilities of all locations, areas, and states, everywhere the species body has a body. They have overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, international companies against themselves, even the same company. In other words, this is a breaching that has all natures of difference. Before there was not the most sophisticated scientific voice at countries A through Z. It was a hyper sophistication, more it measured and maintained, even though James Madison declassified his communications. It measured and maintained, stuff by collusion/s with where and how the hyperforeign, uses a method /s to keep syntactical possession over the syntax and the books at campuses A through Z sickly distinctly and functionally by how sickly non-distinctly too is self-value. You guys are used remotely. You were child abused to self-value, leaving out and replacing with James Madison, our founders left declassified to be communicated for themselves. Like why and how nobody had free speech and why and how everyone had to pretend other at the same time. Therefore, entertaining even slavery, even laws against all women, even tactical roles with a tactically denatured design of the suburbs, only allowed to unfold that way. You have to understand, specifically to have nature demonstrate it too. Increasingly, nature demonstrates the suburbs were designed to cause negative value nature progressions acts in nature. Little kids in the suburbs could discern, just like the little kids in the cities could discern, especially in the cities. There's a breaching method behind the design of things. And where people are dishonest, even with black people's whites of eyes. See, this breaching method tricks for you guys to use words like reparations instead of injunctive reliefs. It shows you guys to hide this and then pretend you're evaluating Marbury versus Madison because it abused you guys since you were kids to be able to perpetrate that, to get away with it. In our faces, they have them self-valuing syntax that was not allowed to be free because they were being measured and maintained through the layers of interest, nature's needs, roles with it. And the difference of that, the form of law, there were witch trials place. There's a witch trials place next to Webb House, which is now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. And that place and places across the country still criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions wrought, replacing what James Madison declassified with the plural founders to be communicated for those founding locations. Pretending other, shown to pretend that science is using all that's the records of what they said at the time. James Madison and nature itself shows us those records, those databases were worse than just criminally foreign influence. And then even worse with the country's group, but it will be worse than that because there's a hyper foreign involved. Since before religious messengers, the campus marcias of the republic for which we stand has pantheism to teach about. If you have a name, therefore a pantheism. In other words, you're only dealing with the invisible but still discernible. The parts of speech of English grammar, for example. They come also with the ability to discern various ways. It's nature's way /s. For example, the hyper invisible but still discernible. As the parts of speech, the name there are more names, more than one name for a verb that we need to appreciate. Where how we need to appreciate nature's body and its parts. All parts of everything is its own. Even if you make something up like art, it is the value of the order of the finite, or the smallest finite detail. It is the value of the difference of that, distinctly from how it is that way with the active and or grouped, distinctly from how it is that way with the progressive and or simultaneous. And this is also a hyperprogramming means. But so where they bring up the lobby, there's a and the difference of it being a Jewish lobby or whatever, even Sandy Hook has roles with it. See, this is a breaching method that showed the names of the people, the sciences, that it showed them how to read and appreciate, the writing of science experts, quote. In other words, the breaching method did. Otherwise, you would have all known because this is declassified. And nature itself shows us no one had free speech. Both the North and the South, they made a phenomenon of everyone fighting. Because when they didn't do that, they had James Madison and plural founders, unnamed, because they didn't even have the security to let us know their names. They had to counter extort everyone to the extent they could. But they had to leave entrenched, northern colonies, southern colonies, roles formally, difference of it, and roles even hiding the difference between guilt, because all the formal roles, all those roles were used and are used to hide that which nature demonstrates. Nature demonstrates all those distinct civil rights and positions were all equally about the human fact, human nature breaching method. Again, that was not just the sense and sensibilities of witch trial courts. Even if the witch trials are made up, regardless of who made them up, look at the other laws that were entrenched. Even slavery, northern colony, southern colony. Even how sickly distinctly it was sickly non-distinctly. Anyone brings it up, that it's used to sense everyone's sensing for the breaching method. Oh my God, we already taught American history this way. You should freak out like that, but you should freak out and change it. You guys can't even follow mandated law. CBS faked conversations with me. Increasingly, people that weren't even in my grade, above my grade and below my grade, are people, families with Harvard Hospital, have roles with the mental health care side at different hospitals too, across the country, with people that make fake exceptions and only people that totally fake at the same time. Then they had high life progressions years later. They have roles with the World Trade Center attack tied to this. And everyone will tell you this. People that are pretending other, changing, faking what I say as proof/s. With these Mendez police too, the class of 1993 has a bunch of police forms of people in the British Superior Court involved with sexual medical offenders of kids, involved with a Dillon family too, with 2 speech class teachers I had in high school, and other class, and then when I had two times I took cooking class. These people facilitated to people with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and me all sides of my house too. These are people that put me in fake conversations with themselves through the mail too. To other people, I can't get a response from any of them. They switch names into branch. Wethersfield police have roles with these people, with the Fox News, with the Facebook page of Judge Napolitano, involved with predicate acts with facts every year since the World Trade Center attack, with people that were also involved with criminally foreign influence uses of the campuses I went since I was the youngest kid, as the ones involved with it. Involved with it, with the news attaching fake ties to doctors with little kids. And me, they faked me being tied to a mental health care doctor as a kid that wasn't at all. Increasingly, people with the campuses intercities make fake and plant fake exceptions. So if you speak about it, it makes it look like the other company. By timing, we're going to walk, and then they just say things in. But that's also right where they are victims/hyper victims. At the same time, guilt, the difference of the guilt was used too to measure and maintain itself left out, which is roles with a whole bunch of other names involved with the instances when you grew up, no matter how old you are. This breaching method is using differences, and they have been preventing mandated law and using their knowledge of good and evil, even the experts. That's when they start leaking too, also with science. I shouldn't have to beg to get myself off the fake conversations with CBS. They also have a bunch of people, that's in Rocky Hills, WFSB. They have a bunch of people involved with Wethersfield, the class of 1993, with the World Trade Center attack, with the time collusion with the Saudi attackers. As one's involved with this Mendez officer, I never had a word of conversation with him in my life. He walked by me a couple of times in high school. He wasn't even in my grade, so I only know his name through whether he knows mine. But he pretended he knew me now, and he's involved also with the Bob Chase confessions with the Whiting forensics. He's involved with a whole bunch of people with wire crimes with them, and Madison's crimes, and digital crimes with databases, and with sexual medical offenders of kids. There's a principal being with more worse than upskirt nature pictures they reportedly put him in prison for. I caught them forcing that first with him and with his prison, apparently, the one he's in. Sandy Hook, too, I believe they put him in. Sandy Hook prison is involved with their other prisoners, too. The prison had collusions with them before they were caught to keep their mouth shut, too, since. Like people next to a body dumping spots, years apart, connected. And the serial killer involved. And these are people increasingly involved, like that, like with people that married the girls that were in my grammar school. I never had a word of conversation to. Many people involved with a former mayor Gold and other former mayors, a Ruth, have roles with the World Trade Center attack with Saudis in America and people from Korea. A bunch of people from Korea. And this is against their own people too, with psychiatry right through world wars. These are also some black KKK themed, Confederate flag themed, German Italian. They're with psychiatry. This is, in other words, their delusions raw, and they have badges and gavels, and they're putting fake things in databases. And they're putting the guilt. They're supposed to represent our country. They're making us guilty so they can hide their own personal roles. A whole bunch of people tied to it as one's named Leahy and Lombardo have roles with federal evidence crimes and with Harvard Hospital. Oh, and with people on my street who have roles with untimely deaths with them, various natures of organized crime with them, planting evidences with them from other areas on my street since I was a kid, and retired Wethersfield police chiefs. These are people fishing with what I say and what others say too, so they can use truth for lies more to cover up what was actually recorded said. They're changing over the fake. Our campus is filmed 24/7 like Central Connecticut State University. They're filming fake things, pretended recorded. A bunch of people tied to and this is worse than just extortion that we could watch each year. There's predicate acts of facts, and these are people involved. Like Justin Klavinskis is reportedly recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with collusions. He married some girl I never was around her on a campus in my life. They tried to make one quick exception when I was in high school, real fast. There was all along Route 175 too, planting evidences with people at and next to the state capitol, involved with all sides of issues, and like that Jewish themed syntax, involved with sexual medical offenders of kids and pretends to encounters like with what victims advocates are also collusions here, with overt criminal enterprises and sexual medical offenders of kids, and keeping people's mouths shut, and roles with differences. Like women, the women and young girls tied to when they were really young. They have the high life progressions because there's an organized crimes that are juxtaposed, and there are acts of them that are predicate acts of facts. There's syntax of little kids. They're having them at the same time with all the other countries, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists. For example, terrorists. Ever since the World Trade Center attack, everyone's using extremism as a word, and radical, tactical terror from how they used to use the word radical. Oh, radical man. In other words, you guys are getting played. At countries A through Z, he many pray, who displeased, follow mandated law, hold on to the black pupils' whites of eyes, and the fakeness that all we all want addressed. See, but we all missed how people, for all these other hyper additional reasons, jump into people's conversations dishonestly. It's gotten away with because of the databases side. Increasingly, there's a valley crest that intelligence in the Britain, Connecticut intelligence families and educators I have and kids recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed through time a number of people involved with that street and conjunctions to it and to that, like Route 3 and the state judicial branches offices in Route 3 and Meadowgate. There's a Kerr family and a DeMoro family. I think it's a Finelli family. I don't know if the Finelli family's on. And then there were two other ones they put after I brought this up. All of a sudden, then they put two people arrested, reported on Valley Crest Street for child pornography. This is not about that. And they arrest people when you catch them doing that stuff because they have roles with it. These are retired police chiefs, their family members, and intimate family ties involved with sexual medical offenders of kids and the security at the hospitals too. Harvard Hospital has roles with the people who teach people how to translate. Investigator of the World Trade Center attack had collusions with it. A minor family has houses next to Harvard Hospital involved too. He saw me out to confess, demonstrate, record, confirm. He has collusions with Arixian Faglione and people on my street that I never saw around. In other words, and they're trying to pretend other too, and they're sequence shifting. That's why they made him come to my house out of nowhere, and they made me stay back too, because they've been spreading lies about me with the Weathersfield, like a Joe DeMoro is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, and he's collusions with a John DeMoro, who also has sexual and medical offenders of kids involved with Weathersfield police and courts, involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and people at town lines involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and people involved with various natures of federal crimes on my street. I never saw on my street in my life. Joe DeMoro made confessions about his roles with federal evidence, his crimes and wire crimes, with his family members and with himself, with the Weathersfield police, and sequence shifts, and fake motivations and motivation screening, because their motivations, the breaching method controls their motivations when they use words like lobbyists, when they speak about differences, religious differences, or color. Would have been brought up how they were black, white, and exceptions collusion /s, and with this shell game, keeping other things, others ourselves, blamed right where nature shows us to blame the breaching method. Nature shows us a breaching method was and is the same. One of the things is a scientific value that all distinct multi-front civil rights impositions are about equally value as. Even a system that values nature's demonstration /s of itself. Now with the /s part, collusions, and standing nature of criminal and ceaseless natures of positive appreciation or negative. Criminal and ceaseless natures of it. Truths can be used for lies. No. Positive can be used for negative. Nature shows us the criminal and ceaseless natures of peace to show us the hyper peace. And why and how. It's showing us with why and how there are two eyes generated across species bodies. Why and how there are two sexes generated across species bodies. Because there is one identity of nature generated. All group difference /s, or it demonstrates Earth's a special difference as our own distinctly, though, forced from here. As force-based nature transfer. Nature being a name hyper-additional for identity. The same reason we need more than one name for a verb, for the identity of a verb. Like the present participle and the past participle. It's about time because it's about this identity of forever nature that nature is. So Facebook distinctly, some other people personally, but then the group too, the difference of that. But these are also people with all sides of criminal and civil cases internationally too. See how they jump in, they're still speaking about racism while they were obligated by nature itself. No, but you see the design of cities is unfathomable. Science never spoke legitimately for that. They have to pretend other, use their knowledge of good and evil. Well, look, I know how to do this principle. Do you even know? Because we didn't even have to read the book though, to build better than that. In other words, all I have to do is be on the same page. Rage or calm voice, we can force that quality of fact achieving nature. Who disbelieves having black people's rights of life is inseparable from any proper treatment of American history. And we're going to learn because nature shows us there is a hyper-evidential. It shows us that some things are true in such a way, /s, that they generate more truths, they generate revelation. Like about this. Lift this, boxing. And it's about fighting, but by the rules. But the rules have been abridged since semi-ancient times, so all have failed to discern how this is about how to cause evolution's fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere for everyone or we sense an even greater is revealed, and or anyone senses, because only an individual could depend the finite. And we have to address the uses of the database slash S involved and the relative delusions, because the interbranch experts are criminally poor and influenced while tactically delusions rot. Then they say, oh, we're not experts on psychiatry. What are you guys speaking for the law then? Get them on paper, one name and sequence at the branch. Get me off the paid conversations with the interbranch and the people tied to them in the news, because they have more people involved with their overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and relative threats. And knowing my name, I don't even know their name. Get them on paper. We're going to show you how to do peaceful things. And get me off the paid conversations with these Weathersfield police switching games too. Get them on paper, Judge Napolitano. They brought your thing into this. And their roles next to Fox Connecticut News, as in Harper, Connecticut, which is also next to the state capitol. No, Mark Violet, a recorded confessed demonstrated firm. He's involved with some people involved with. It's from intelligence families that used to live near me, like named O'Brien, and they have other people involved with them, with people from Korea, involved with their educators too. Their roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders, with people out next to the state capitol, trying to make it look like the picture I know them. Never tried to contact them. Increasingly, there's a Judge Smith involved with organized crimes in them. And in other words, and other judges involved with this Leahy family too, with multiple courts, personally and professionally, prosecutors, the family members, the other little kids involved with sexual medical offenders of kids, overt criminal enterprises. And this shows where and how they were abused since they were kids. I recorded that too, tied to the people within the Britain Spirit Court. They're tactically juxtaposed distinct natures of organized crimes that are consciously exploited, and they're not legitimately with the acting professors they brought in, and the departments of the campuses individually grouped in together. Heather Hansen will tell you, I never had a word of conversation with her at Central Connecticut State University. A whole bunch of people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed she was forced, tricked her, persuaded to collusions with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin there, and with people involved with sexual medical offenders of kids, per themselves, on Valley Crest Street and on Morgan Circle, Meadowgate, and we're involved with this former Mayor Gold too, and other mayors. As people involved, Route 3 too, a Mr. Neville, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by the kids involved with that, with various investigators of other natures of crimes, where I use that to measure and maintain, including with the victims' advocates, measure and maintain their leave details out. Get them on paper, one name and sequence, please, and fix the fake news. Because you guys are worse than world. You're making America guilty where it's not supposed to be. Just follow mandated law now. Your science leaks. Go whisper creed.